I'll tell you, though, the main thing about getting married, I could never be called to testify.
What do you mean?
A wife can't testify against the husband.
Oh, right. Actually, though, I don't think that's actually true.
What do you mean?
They did a whole murder she wrote about that. See, this butler thought his wife couldn't testify against her husband, but it turns out, legally, she actually could.
That's right. Common thing that I tell people, anyone I meet in the street, I say, everything I know, I learned from movies and TV. And this episode of The Sopranos is about how that's not a good way to live your life. Welcome to Cut to Black, a Sopranos sit-down. I'm Jim Scampoli, and I've seen every episode of The Sopranos.
I'm Jacob Burrows, and I've seen 46 episodes of The Sopranos. And indeed, that could pretty much be the name of our podcast, Watching Too Much Television. And I do find it confusing and maybe ironic that this show is teaching me stuff about like everything. And like, what if a television show is telling you you're watching too much television? What does that mean? Do I need to read a book now, Jim? What do I even do? And also, who made this?
Oh, this episode's script was written by Nick Santora and Terrence Winter. Terrence Winter is a Sopranos mainstay. Nick Santora, this is the only episode of Sopranos he's credited with writing. He also wrote 15 episodes of Prison Break. He wrote 12 episodes of The Guardian, 19 episodes of Law and Order. So he's a dude. But it was also a story credit to Robin Green, Mitchell Burgess, Terrence Winter, and David Chase, all Sopranos mainstays, as well as the director, John Patterson.
That's not something we've seen as much, is it? Where it says like a story credit that's separate from the screenplay, or has that been a thing?
Actually, I mean, you mentioned reading books, because it's like, yeah, we're watching too much TV. Let's turn to books. I've been reading The Sopranos session. Just came out. It's a book about The Sopranos. And I was reading David Chase talking about season 4. And I guess that's a common thing you see this season, because he's trying to give everyone credit on like every episode almost. And he realized that that's dumb and doesn't work out. And you have to go to the unions and all this stuff. It's a whole thing.
Oh. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, the way we assume television is written, there is a room that has writers in it. I'm sure they'll think of a cool name sometime for the room with the writers. But either way, yeah, they just, you spitball ideas. Hey, you, me, Jim, we know what it's like. We spitball things all the time. But then someone has to get credit for all the spitball and for each particular episode. And I guess it's kind of weird because, it's a collaborative effort. Maybe he was trying to fix that. And then the unions got in the way. Oh, those damn unions.
Well, and it's interesting, though, too, because even though David Chase is doing that, he also talks a lot about how he would be the one to come up with everything and he would rewrite everything. And he's like, that's what showrunners do. Ask any showrunner. They'll tell you. He's like, I would just go home. He talks about the process. He'd go home for the summer. He'd get out the old, dry erase board and just put a big line and start writing down, all right, this beat. Okay, Tony's going to do this. Carmella's going to do this. And then he'd go into the writer's room and say, this is what we're doing. Fill in the rest. What do we got here?
Well, okay. Yeah, that sounds pretty cool as well. Well, speaking of, we're going to go through this and that, just like David Chase with his whiteboard, we're going through the steps of the episode. And this is another thing that, it's production influencing the show, where I guess Paulie had, for some reason, he couldn't do the show right for a bit. That's why they put him in the jumpsuit, right?
Yeah, there was something what he had, like something with his back. Well, no, that's Big Pussy.
Well,
yeah, there was something with production because they just put him in jail, basically, and he just had to have those scenes where he could be on the phone for a while. But now Paulie is back. And you know what? When I see Paulie's back, I realize I've been missed him so much.
Yeah, Paulie Walnuts is back, and he's changing the mood just by walking in. Everyone's really happy to see him, and he starts complaining almost immediately about where's my money, and he brings up Green Grove, which again, like, it's not Tony's favorite place in the world to discuss, but, tone-deaf Paulie Walnuts is like, hey, let's bring this up right away, and let's also complain about this, and yeah, he's doing his thing. And I mean, he rightfully feels that he's being sort of shuffled off to the side, right? I mean, that's the whole thing going on, right? I mean, he is, kind of.
He is, but also, like, it's the thing I guess I forgot with Paulie being gone for so long is just who Paulie is and how, as we see as some of these adventures he goes on now that he's back, It's like, oh yeah, he's gonna he's gonna make things worse in a way. Like I don't feel like he's wrong for thinking that, but he's not helping himself either. And I do want to call out, they play a Frank Sinatra song, Nancy with the laughing face, and it's his song or whatever. And then they have the hilarious line where Bobby's like, why is this his song? And they never explain it, but let's go through the lyrics real quick. The lyrics are, if I don't see her each day, I miss her. Gee, what a thrill each time I kiss her. Believe me, I got a case on Nancy with the laughing face. She takes the winter and makes it summer, and summer could take some lessons from her. Picture a tomboy in lace. That's Nancy with the laughing face. Have you ever heard mission bells ringing? Well, she'll give you the very same glow. When she speaks, you'd think it was singing, just to hear her say hello. I swear to goodness, you can't resist her. She's mighty sweet. Wait till you see her sister. Well, no angel can replace Nancy with the laughing face. So I don't know what that hints at. Is that some sort of, unrequited love in Paulie's past? Or is that just Paulie's love for his ma? Because like you said, he's already immediately talking about Green Grove and concerned about, taking care of his ma.
I have no idea. Like, I thought when you started reading the lyrics, there was something at the end, like, and the laugh, and she's my mother. Like, I thought that was going to be the last line of, like, a punchline. But, no, I guess it's just a classic kind of love song. And I don't know that Paulie's, he's never been that much into that. But this just shows some sentimentality from him, because he does have a lot of that. So, yeah, I'm not sure. We also get to see, of course, that Carmilla's cousin, the financial planner, is now like in the inner circle. Like he's right there. He's saying hello to Paulie, and Paulie's like, "Who the fuck is this guy?" Essentially, he does a joke like, "Oh, you're just back from college?" And Paulie just stares at him. So he's getting confident in this circle, maybe too confident, but he's just a dope. So there you go.
Well, and I wanted to call out real quick because this is later in this episode when Christopher goes to Tony and Sil for advice on marriage. Paulie is the one that's like, be single like me. Marriage and our thing just don't jive. So I don't know. Maybe that's connected, or maybe we're those people that David Chase laughs at when he's like, haha, you're looking for meaning in my stuff. There's no meaning here.
Well, I think it's just basically like if they played like the boys are back in town or whatever the fuck, like there would be no hinted depth there. Sometimes you don't have to show the depth. You can just sort of hint at that there is a story here, and like you're describing the blank spaces of the world by giving him a little bit of something, and you don't need to explain it, but it is not what you would expect, and just that very fact I think is why they did it.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah, back to Brian. I do like that Tony is getting a kick out of like this guy is doing drugs and like licking a stripper's nipple or something or other. Like he's kind of enjoying that he's, I guess, corrupting this guy in a way, I suppose.
Oh yeah, for sure. So he's enjoying it. And Tony's enjoying even just kind of watching like, haha, that kid.
Oh, you.
And then we get to the first scene of someone watching television in this episode of Adriana watching some court show, and the reveal is, I was married to him, and then, but you can't testify if you're married, which is the whole inciting incident of her whole thing here.
Yeah, she's watching an episode of the show Murder One, which I've heard of, but I've never seen. Created by Steven Bochco, who's a TV mainstay. But it's funny because what's great about this is, we'll laugh at her, but we've probably all done this. We've watched a movie or TV show and been like, oh yeah, like you pick up some weird little factoid, and then later on you're probably telling someone like, oh wait, but I thought that's not legal because of blah blah blah, not citing that it's from a TV show, and someone's like, what are you, an idiot? Like, that's not true. It's like, oh shit. Oh, okay.
No, but they have to tell you if you're a cop. I'm completely sure of this. Because that makes sense. And it's true. We all do that all the time. Literally everything I know is from law stuff is just from 99 Problems with Jay-Z. You learn about the trunk in the back. Hey, it's locked, so you can't open it. Problem is, I'm in Sweden. Well, I'm not. I'm in Ireland. I was in Sweden. Now I'm in Ireland. None of the shit from U.S. television even works here. It doesn't even make sense. I can't do that, because I would do is like, don't I get a phone call if I got arrested? It's like, no. Like, because television has taught me literally everything.
My lawyer.
Yeah. And Adriana, for example, I mean, it's also interesting that I guess they're in one of these, one of these engagements where you're just engaged forever, because when she comes out and she's like, let's get married, it's like a radical idea where, I think we all know these couple who are engaged forever. Like, it's a classic The Office situation where you're just engaged forever and nothing ever happens. So when she brings up, like, let's get married, it's like, what? You crazy? But, like, wasn't that the plan? Guess not.
Yeah, because when did he proposed? Like when she was at her mom's house, right? Like they were in a fight, and remember
Yes.
and he's like, I got a ring and everything, like
Yeah.
something like that. But yeah, it's I think they mentioned it's been 2 years or something, but it's great because
Yeah.
it makes complete sense, because I do feel like they love each other, but it's such a toxic relationship. And plus, Chris, she's
Yeah.
she's just kind of dumb. She's innocent, but she's just dumb. And then Chris is just such a fuck up. And it's not like it really meant a ton. He just proposed because they were in a fight or whatever. And then it is bizarre that doesn't she, when she even says that, doesn't she say, and then like a wife doesn't have to testify? And it's just interesting that Chris doesn't pick up on that. Like, why is she saying that to you? But Chris is probably high. Who knows? I think they're
Well, he's
watching.
probably high.
Oh, sorry, good.
They're what?
I
No,
think
they're
they're
watching
watching
the
the
A-Team. Is that what
during
you're
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so romantic. Yeah, no, I think it makes sense for her to say that, though, in general, because, of the situation and their line of work and all. So the next day, they go out for breakfast. It's Tony, Ralph, and this guy, Brian, who's the financial planner. And I think it's interesting because, I mean, Ralph and Tony's relationship is interesting in general, but that's a whole nother story. But just the fact of who actually is in the inner circle, we don't see Paulie like eating breakfast with them here. I don't know. He wouldn't be as relaxed. Somehow these guys just hang out and feel like Tony and Ralph are like best pals. He's such a great earner, as we remember. And of course Brian's there. He's talking about hey, this is what I would invest in. I'd do it like this. And he brings up this whole scam. And Tony latches onto it.
Yeah, it's interesting because they do the thing where he starts. I mean, I guess it's because it gets boring, because he starts talking about it and then they cut to an outside shot where you can't hear the dialogue anymore. I don't know if that's like a Breaking Bad type. Yeah, we show how to make meth, but we make sure the steps aren't fully correct so people can learn how to make meth from our show. Speaking of, learning from television, or it was just kind of like, all right, we get it. They're going to do a scam with some homes. I just thought it was an interesting choice how it just cuts to like the outside the diner wide shot. They're still talking, but you're not hearing like the rest of whatever the scam is, as far as, I mean, we get the basic gist. They're buying cheap houses and then phoning them up to get more money off of them and then dumping them.
Yeah, but I guess it's just more interesting to lay it out in the next scene, or where Tony goes to the Russian baths and sits in the sauna, and they have to explain it to this other guy. So he goes through the steps and actually lays out, oh, we're going to do this and then we're going to do that. So we do get it explained. I suppose that's why they did it.
Yeah, and plus the thing I about this scam in general, like, it just seems like they already get their money. They buy these houses for, I think they said like $100,000 a piece, and then they end up having an appraiser say that they're worth like $300,000 or more. And then they have the HUD or whatever, the urban housing development, buy them for the inflated price. The thing I guess I don't get is, why don't they just, not that Tony needs to be involved, but why wouldn't HUD still fix those houses up then? Like, why does it end with them just like leaving the houses? I mean, I know they pull all like the scrap metal from them, but I don't understand why. Doesn't the urban housing development plan on spending money to fix them up, or no?
Isn't it because the 300,000, like, they have to pay that essentially themselves? Or yeah, I guess.
Well, actually, you know what? I think I already answered my question. The thing is, okay, the appraisers, I think, say that they've already put in the money, and that's why these houses are worth 300,000. I guess that's what it is. And then they just sit there as shitholes like they already were. I mean, this is basically an episode of The Wire. Speaking of like, because I've learned this on The Wire, I guess, and now I'm learning it here on The Sopranos.
Yeah, but it's very The Wire. I mean, the whole sequence of events of like these houses are all run down, and we got to get these people out of the house. But who's gonna do that? And then there's kids with guns running around acting silly. It's very The Wire. But no, I did actually have the same thought as you of like, oh great, and everybody wins, and then it's like, now we're gonna strip the copper wire, we're gonna shoot some guy in the leg. Like, okay, let's make this as bad a deal as possible. But my supposition was that the 300,000, even though the state helps pay for it, I mean, actually fixing up the houses and that would be very expensive, and they wouldn't actually have any money at the end of it. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, well, no, yeah, because I think what it is, I was thinking they were gonna like that the urban housing development place buys the houses with the plan to fix them up anyways.
Yeah.
But thinking about it, yeah, they're probably being pitched as they're now $300,000 houses because the guy flipped them. Like no one goes to look at them. They just assume the appraiser's right and that the guy bought them for 100 and he put the money into it to basically sell them for that. I guess we're getting caught up in the details more than we should.
I think it's really interesting, and I want someone who has real experience with this to come in and actually explain how these scams work, because we can't be learning all of it from television. Like, it's probably not even accurate, whatever we see here. As this episode has taught me not to listen to television, but they do get this guy to sort of be the front man, and meanwhile, Furio's out looking at pictures of Carmilla and calling Carmilla. And I'm like, okay, so this is going somewhere, maybe, I guess.
It is interesting the way they've played this out, because for a long time, without like even, I guess even this episode is the first time we really confirm that Furio like is also feeling things. They vaguely hint at it before, but with Carmilla's track record on the show, we always just, you can just assume to, just give it to Carmilla playing out these love fantasies in her head, and there's not much there. But now we're seeing that Furio, he's looking at the picture, he calls, he tells he tells her there's a pretty one of her. And it's interesting because she seems to not be as concerned so much with Furio anymore. And now he's like the pining guy about it.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit. So we'll see where that goes. And
one thing I wanted to call out, when they're having the schwitz or whatever, I guess you call it, when they're in the sauna, and they're talking, they do talk about the summer of '67, the Newark riots. That's what we saw in the episode Down Neck, which is also a 7th episode of the first season. Supposedly, all the 7th episodes have some sort of dealing with Tony thinking about the past or his DNA. Now, D-Girl was one of them. I don't remember specifically what Tony was dealing with in season 2. And I think the other one was, what was the one in season 3? I'd have to look it up. But they're talking about the summer '67. That's when we had the flashback in Down Neck when we see young Tony and the Newark riots, and Livia's commenting them on the news. And also what ties it together with New Sopranos is the Sopranos movie is supposed to deal with the Newark riots. So it's a thing they keep talking about. It's clearly something David Chase is very interested in, because that's kind of the time frame we should be developing with the movie. Which, speaking on the movie real quick, they have confirmed there will be a Tony Soprano character in there, which I thought was kind of obvious. I don't know how much they'll stay with him, but Tony will be there.
Okay, cool. And they also talk about music a little bit. Also, I mean, I know we've already dug into this, but I just dug up some of the lines from the sauna where they say that once the HUD guarantees the mortgage application, you take it to the bank. So essentially, they are making a mortgage to pay the 300,000, and then they fail to make the payments, so the houses get foreclosed on. That's how they get the money.
Oh, of course, yeah, duh, because someone's cutting that check. I was thinking that the HUD was cutting the check, but no, duh, they're going with the bank. It's a loan, and then it's never going to get paid back, but they've already got the money, and
that's why they say the taxpayers have to pay, because they're going to get like bailed out by the bank system or whatever.
And it's such a Tony thing. Like, I understand it's kind of all relative, but they're, walking away with, 1.3 million after, I guess, putting up 300,000 for like 100,000 each house. But Tony talking about that 7,000 in wire. I mean, I guess I get it. 7,000, but at that point it's like, hey, we're already ahead. Why are we?
But it's not about the 7,000. It's about a kid giving him attitude when he's in the car trying to
very
teach
true.
his son.
Absolutely.
But then, interestingly, none of the other characters are like, I don't give a shit about these 7,000, Tony.
That's what I mean.
They're like, okay, let's get some people shot. So everyone sort of follows. But that's the thing about everyone in this world is very like, they care more about 7,000 than about 100,000, if that makes sense. Because they get very much like, oh, what? No, someone's trying to take something away. Then it's worse than, yeah, I guess it's why when it comes to gambling, it's worse actually losing a little bit than, I don't know, gambling psychology. That's what's at play here, I think.
Yes, yeah, and it does come up here that Assemblyman Zellman is now seeing Tony's old Guma arena, and hey, Tony thinks it's fine. Oh, big, you're adults, no big deal. And of course, you mentioned the "Oh Girl" songs playing, and I mean, Sopranos is always it's obvious at this point. Sopranos is great with the music because we do come back to that song later on.
Oh yeah, I mean, and luckily, I mean, he's fine with it. So like, don't even worry about it. Why were you even worried about
no big deal.
telling me? Oh yeah, but he's like serious about it because he's separated his wife, something that Tony would never do. And he's taking care of her and all, and he's fine with it. It's fine. So meanwhile, we do have Adriana again being ambushed by her FBI handler, who's trying to sort of wheedle out more information, and she says, actually, we're getting married, which then gets brought up in a meeting, and they don't give a shit, so clearly this law she's thinking about doesn't really matter.
Yeah, because it shows that even though, because, we're dumb audience members, we're just assuming like, oh yeah, she's right. But yeah, the first hint is how the FBI is kind of like very indifferent, and they're like, should we support this? There's no like, oh my God, she's got us by the short hairs. Oh no, she's the genius, Adriana. So yeah, it's very clear that this is not an issue. So I kind of like how they throw that in there. And on the scam end, real quick, I like that they keep bringing in this urologist every now and then. He's kind of like their straight businessman, like front guy they use for stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
And then Tony brings AJ to the church that we saw him bring Meadow to, and I think that was the pilot, right?
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because it's like he wants to relive this moment he had with Meadow, I guess, like 4 years ago. Like, it adds up where, now it's time to bring you to the church, and he's very disappointed that he's not getting it across what he wants. And I think I don't remember very clearly, but I think when Meadow was there, she was a bit of a teenager about it, but she was kind of like, oh, cool, it's a church. And meanwhile, he's there like, what? But room service? Like, he's not following, really.
It must be so fun to write for AJ because, Tony brings up, your great grandfather or whatever it was came to this country at $4 in his pocket, and then AJ's well, yeah, but I think hotel rooms were like 20 cents a night. So was room service like a penny? He's like, room service. And then we see Tony do the thing, although he doesn't mess up the line, but he repeats a line that someone said to him. I think Brian said it, like, buy land, they're not making any more of it. Buy land, AJ. And it's like, don't, like, this is not going to sink in.
That wasn't the point either of what he was saying before that. He was saying, build your own church and that. And now he's like, buy land, because he's at his wit's end. And that's always when they sort of recycle something that someone else has said. Then... AJ
also has some kind of, decent points, like, that he's inadvertently making, because... he talks about like Italians drive from all over to come to this church. And then he's like, why don't we do that? And it's like really pointing out like Tony is such a, we all kind of to a point, but like he's such a hypocrite here. And then he says something else like about the neighborhood falling down or whatever. And I think AJ says like, well, who gives a shit about Newark? And it's like, that's kind of right. Like, who gives a shit? But like, you should be giving a shit, especially as we see with these assemblymen and they're, they talk about their history and how they wanted to change the world, and now they're the cliches. So, AJ, he knows what's going on.
Yeah, a little bit. And again, I mean, the thing about Newark, and I swear before I watched The Sopranos, New Jersey, like I had an idea of what New Jersey was, but it's not like you really know. I learn everything from movies and television, so I just knew like, oh, if you're from New Jersey, it means you're not cool, because if you're from New York, you're cool, but you're not because they insult people by saying they're from New Jersey. Also, they make reality shows there. That was like my New Jersey impression. And when they say like, "Oh, who gives a shit about Newark?" I'm like, "Well, I can see outside the car windows. It's not good." So that's my understanding of this place now. And
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's me with all of the U.S. I did go one time, but you know, we learn everything from movies. So there you go.
Oh, and then yes, so then he pulls up. Well, because why does he? Oh, he pulls up because he's like, these are the houses I bought, and he's like, those crappy ones. And then we see, the guy comes out, and then the lady, and then what AJ says, that's a crack hoe. So that's a crack hoe, and he's like all kind of giggling. And yeah, it is interesting how Tony makes this statement later on to Melfi of how he drove away, he didn't even do anything, but yeah, we know that all this other stuff is happening because that guy pissed Tony off. So Tony wants to clear these. He makes it a point that he wants these houses cleared and they're like whole little crack den, fucked up. Not for the good of the neighborhood, but because Tony was like insulted in front of his son.
Yep. And that's basically the next scene. He's going to see the assemblyman, accidentally runs into Irina. And also, I guess this is like his bachelor pad because he's separated from his wife. And you can kind of tell, even though it's a nice place, I'm also like, oh, the assemblyman, like, this is not the house you expect for him. Even the guy who's sort of fronting the operation with the HUD, he has a really nice house and family. And the assemblyman is having some sort of midlife crisis, moving into this place that has a piano for some reason. And I wonder if he plays the piano. Either way, Irina's there, and it's kind of awkward. And she's taking English classes. Thanks you very much. It's not going great, but he's paying for it. I mean, they seem to be doing okay. And so is Tony with this. He's not going to be affected by this.
Yeah, no, not at all. And then we have Adriana and Christopher. Like we mentioned, they were talking about their engagement and how it's time to get married. But she does open up to Chris about, her potentially having kids. And it's such a brutal, like, Christopher is such like a piece of shit because why didn't you tell me you were damaged goods?
Yeah.
You knew you were damaged goods and you didn't tell me. And she says, what you said, you said you'd still love me. And he doesn't mean that I'll marry you. And he storms out. And it's like, I mean, I guess this whole season has been kind of like just shitting on poor Adriana. And it's really like tough to watch sometimes. Not that she's getting killed or murdered or whatever, but everyone treats her like garbage.
Yeah, and I mean, okay, so it's very bad. Christopher's very bad, and she says her uterus got pierced, and he's like, both of them, and she's like, that's the ovaries. You're thinking of there, babe. But yeah, when he reacts like that, because we know how. I mean, obviously it's a sensitive thing, but we even have it like. We have the basis of it because we remember how difficult it was to open up even to her best friend, the FBI agent, before she knew about that. That was rough enough. And now she feels like she wants to get married to protect him. That's the thing, and protect herself. But like that's why she's doing this. But she still feels that I can't do that without telling him about this. So she's a great person on several levels right there. I mean, she has other flaws, but like she's getting married to protect him, but she can't do that without being honest. And she just gets all thrown back in her face. You knew you were damaged goods. You never fucking told me. The look of hurt on her face. And he yells, how could you lie to me like that? Because that's how lies work, Christopher. You piece of shit. But weirdly, you get part of what he's saying because he is so obsessed with family, and his relationship with his parents is really weird, and his father got murdered, and he's really interested in the name living on. But then he says stuff like, what, some little kid with chinky eyes with the name Waltasani get picked on or whatever.
That's beat up every day.
Yeah, and he storms out.
Which is kind of interesting. I mean, I don't know how like purposeful this was, but it's kind of interesting because in season 2 premiere, remember when it cuts to like it's doing the montage at a very good year, and then they call Christopher Moltisanti at the it's like the stock test or whatever, and an Asian guy turns around and he's like here. So I mean, I don't know how on the nose they're going with that, but hey, it works.
So he goes off and gets some advice from his for his teammates there in his crew, saying that, you know, yeah, Silvio says you could have more kids than the Kennedys, but if you're married to some twat, what good is that? Good advice all around. And Tony says you gotta have balance in a relationship, and like they're all concerned that the kid thing's never gonna happen. And Tony's right. He's like, what, with medicine today, technology? And it's not like she said, like, I can definitely never have kids. She said it would be difficult. And, like, he's going to have 18 Gumas that are all going to get pregnant anyway. So, like, the name's going to live on.
Well, and it's kind of interesting that, you know, Tony and Sil, you'd almost, it's such a measured, rational response.
Yeah.
It's just weird because you'd almost expect, because maybe they too would be like, yeah, this thing of ours, family, that's what's important. But no, yeah, they're being pretty level headed. And then Paul is just saying, yeah, you know, just be a bachelor like me.
Yeah, and I feel like the weird thing they have with their relationships with their wives is such a thing of like, their wives all have things that they're unhappy with. That's why they go out and distract themselves in other ways. So, like, I don't feel like that would be the hugest deal to them. Maybe. I don't know. It's strange. But they are all interested in family. So, either way, it is a very measured response. It does sort of talk some sense into him. Though he does have to go and do some drugs in the car first, of course, before coming to any conclusion, like we all do when making big decisions.
Yeah, such a fuck up. Yeah, we just cut to fucking Range Rover parked in the side of a shitty neighborhood, and Chris just wakes up. He's still got like the thing wrapped around his arm, and like needles are out. And yep, good call, Chris. Way to go, man. And
yes.
And then what? Then we have the house is cleared, or is that okay?
I'm just going to cut you off because there's a tiny thing that doesn't really matter at all, but it was just interesting that I don't know if my version of the subtitles was different than the cut or something, but when he leaves, the subtitles say, I've got to think about it, but that line isn't there. Like, he doesn't say
weird.
that. But my subtitles, for whatever reason, it just says, I've got to think about it. And I think they cut it out because it was too hilarious to have him say that and then have him passed out in the car with a needle in his arm. And so he's just kind of like, all right, see you later. And so I just thought that was kind of like, because I had to go back, like, wait, did he say that? Is my hearing that bad? But no, he didn't say it.
Yeah, no, because I mean, we can infer that that's what he's doing. He's just thinking about it, getting high.
Yep. Could be in the script and they cut it. You know, happens all the time. Next scene, like you mentioned, we have the assemblyman going to pass the buck and put the problem forward to the next guy. Just move it on over, and we'll take the 7,000 out of your end then if you don't call one of you. Come on, you run like black kid groups, right? You can get some black kids in there, right?
Yeah. And I mean, and I think that's when he mentions, because even though he's not in a midlife crisis in a bachelor pad, he does mention that he's like paying off a previous wife. So these are kind of like, not that they're excuses for how these people are acting. They're supposed to be in public service, but like that's kind of one of the factors, obviously, on why he's like taking these shortcuts and these paydays, because it's like, oh, well, I have a lifestyle I'm afforded to, plus I have to pay child support on this and that, so really I'm the victim, and that's why we need to do stuff like this. So like that's why it's very The Wire to me, because it's all about how these corruption seeps into everything. In the speaking of Sopranos Sessions book, in their synopsis of this episode, they kind of shit talk it a bit and say, oh, it's like not a great one because it focuses on like these assemblymen too much, and then we get the neighborhood where they go to clear the houses out, and they want more Tony. But I didn't really get that at all. I felt like it was kind of a nice way to kind of map out how some of these things play out and how Tony has his fingers in everything.
Yeah, I think it's solid. Also, I mean, the stuff with Christopher and Adriana is very good too. The assemblyman stuff, all of that plays into it. It is true we sort of take a satellite view of Tony for some of it, but I mean, the whole thing's happening because of the situation he was in when he was trying to tell AJ about what's going on. And we also get this scene with Melfi where she's reminding him, hey, remember when you went crazy last time? And that's when they get into anger management and all that. Like, hey, another time I would have done more than just throw the tissue dispenser or whatever, and he did put it back. But she accurately says, "You loomed," like, because that is such a good description of what he does.
And I guess to tie in like how Christopher was saying, you know, how did you lie to me? Tony kind of says the same thing to Melfi, like, well, you lied to me. And it's like, that's not the same thing. That's not what she did. And then and as we get to it, this whole thing, maybe, do you think Tony was just okay with Irina? I mean, because obviously his reaction later on is tied to Gloria, I'd say, more than with Irina, right? Yeah. So is it that he was just playing up that he was okay and he wasn't? Or was he okay until he starts thinking about Gloria again and now it's not okay?
Yeah, I think option 2. What you said there, I think that's it. Because if this scene with Melfi wasn't here, with him being like upset about Gloria and having to remember that when he, like last time, I think he was saying, yeah, I made a donation to the suicide fund or whatever, so now it's done, like it's over. If this scene wasn't here, it probably, you know, it wouldn't have ended the same way, the episode.
I like that he does bring up the Meadows therapist that she had referred her to, because it's kind of just a fun thread. We never saw if he said anything to her about it, and he's like, yeah, that was a good one. Like they're kind of just bringing up their past, like little funny things that have happened, like when he looms over her and fucking yells and says he's gonna smash her face in a million pieces.
Yep. And yes, so then we have, like we've talked about before, the A-team. Adriana's sitting there drinking wine and smoking in the morning, I assume, because it's not going to be a great day for her after what happened. And he comes in and says, all right, I'll marry you. He still says, I'm still not happy that you lied to me, but I'll try to deal with it. I'll be the good guy.
And then she asks if he's high, which he is. And then I think he just says, like, don't start or something, you know, just, that's not important.
Yep. And so things start progressing rapidly. Adriana goes to see,
Carmela.
Yeah, she goes to see Carmela, and she goes like, oh, we're going to go to Vegas, but of course that's not allowed. We're going to do it in here then, in the yard if it's nice out, and the whole wedding's planned in seconds there. You're not allowed to do it small in this family.
No. Yeah, I mean, plus, I mean, like they mentioned when she's trying on her dress, you got to get those envelopes. Hopefully more than $40. Then we have the gang kids roll up to clear out the crack house, and we see the dude that kind of flashes peace to Tony. He's got his gun ready, but they hit him with a bat. Then they kind of shoot the wall near him, and I guess it gets ricocheted, and I assume it shoots him in the dick. That's kind of what they're getting at.
Yeah, I didn't see too clearly. Maybe the leg, but yeah, they do a good job of making this a pretty tense situation. They show like all the kids hanging out in there with their cracked out parents, and then these kids rolling up with guns, and I felt like, okay, so something really bad is gonna happen, like some kids gonna get shot, and they do go like, oh, just shoot the roof, and I was so sure that like they weren't gonna realize that there was a second floor, and they were just going to shoot all the people on the top floor, and it's all going to get fucked up.
And plus, they're just shooting walls. Like there could be people in those rooms, and bullets can go through walls. So yeah, it's very tense. You feel like you're just waiting for the big fuck up to happen. And I mean, they do shoot that guy, but it doesn't seem like much comes from it because it's like, just a crackhead. Who gives a shit, right?
Yeah, I don't think that. Yeah. It's weird, though, the way we as TV viewers sympathize with characters, because that guy probably isn't a bad guy, well, as such, but yeah, he was rude to Tony. Now, Tony is a bad guy, but we're like, yeah, shoot him in the dick, you know?
But I also did feel for that guy. It is a weird, the way the episode plays out, it's kind of like, it is almost like that guy's getting what he deserved for talking shit to Tony, but then I also feel bad for him.
Yeah. No, good. Well, you should. They just, hey, get out of here, you bitch, and all of that. And I really thought it was going to go worse. Like, it was going to be like Tony having another psychological problem because, you know, some kids got shot and whatever. But I mean, it's almost better that it's not like that, because it's kind of showing how all these things happen. Like, Tony says a few words to someone, and then that someone, the assemblyman, goes and talks to someone else and talks to someone else, and like things just happen, and he's not even really connected to it. He wouldn't even know if someone died there, I feel. So it's all good for him.
Yes. And then we see Brian gets $15,000 watch from Tony. And, he tries to say, like, I can't take this. But, I mean, he's going to take it. Of course he is. And he's like, but Tone, the taxpayers. I do like that, like, I like how this guy plays it because he kind of seems like he doesn't want to do bad stuff. But then it's like, oh, if I'm getting, like, watches and I get to hang out with Tony Soprano and do drugs at a strip club, like, this is cool. And then I get to be in my square civilian life other times. Just kind of flirting with the fire, I guess.
Yeah, and he says, like, oh, you actually did it? Oh, I was just speculating. And I guess there's maybe some truth to that, but, like, he should know better.
Yeah.
If that's true, he should know better. And also, he didn't pay $15,000 for that watch.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So he just had a watch. He couldn't get rid of it any other way anyway at the moment. So and Furio comes to the door and doesn't want to come in.
Yeah, he's sad. Furio's sad now.
Yeah,
Furio's sad. I wait in the car. I put my foot on the gas or whatever he says.
Yeah, and Carmel was looking forward to seeing those pictures, and like it's pretty dramatic shot of Furio like thinking about like, I can't go in. Oh, it's so sad. And then he goes and sits in the car all alone, just waiting.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, then of course we have Polly Walnuts hanging out with, again, I forgot his name. What's his name?
Johnny Sack.
Yeah, well, Johnny Sack. And he tells him about this new landscape deal going on and says, oh, wait, this is private, right? And I'm like, how serious is he when he says, like, oh, I gotta know, this doesn't leave the table? Like, does he understand what he's doing or not?
I believe that he doesn't understand, because just remembering, like, Paulie now, because, I mean, it's weird, because at the end of season 3, they totally set it up that Paulie is trying to, team with New York and take down Tony. And then it feels like that's what's happening when he keeps complaining and calling from prison. But this line to me feels genuine, like Paulie is just kind of dumb and he always likes to complain and talk to anyone. And maybe he isn't fully aware of what he's doing.
Maybe that, or maybe because Johnny Sack a few episodes ago, he wanted to kill Ralph, he wanted to do all sorts, but he's been sort of put in line now. And when Paulie complains, he's like, oh, he never even called Tony. It's like, well, Tony's the boss. He's got to separate himself and blah, blah, blah. So maybe Paulie senses that on some level. And that's why he's like, hey, I got to know. This isn't going to leave the table, right? Because he senses that Johnny Sack is not going to go against Tony to the level that maybe he was expecting. Maybe.
Yeah, and he's kind of lost a little bit of status that he may have had previously.
Yeah, exactly. I still think about back in season 1 at the end there when Paulie said, like, oh, I can't. It's like talking to Silvio, like, this thing about seeing a therapist, like, are we really okay with this? And I'm like, oh, he's going to kill Tony. I've been thinking about it ever since. Yeah, so
then
what happens next?
We have Tony and Zellman. Assemblyman Zellman like sees Tony drive by. It's like a weird setup because he's like walking out of a meeting or something with his assistant, and then we see Tony zip by, and then he just kind of goes down the street, and Tony's already there gathering up all the the scrap metal that they're gonna get an extra 7 or 8K on or whatever. And they just kind of have a quick back and forth about how it's like working out, and then we have that little kid be like, "Is there gonna be a nice house here now?" And as we, the audience, know, no, there isn't. Nope, there's going to be worse houses there now because now they don't even have the scrap metal anymore.
Yeah, and he doesn't even bother denying it. Like, he just gives a blank face, which is, I don't know, kind of probably telling that young child something about politicians in general. Because not only aren't there going to be nice houses, this guy you're talking to is actually responsible for it, and he's going to line his pocket with the money there. And that's all almost understood there in his eyes.
The only other thing with the way this episode plays out, and I guess it's just for the good of the plot here, rather than like reality based, it feels like Tony and Zellman are way less careful as far as when they're interacting, because they're just interacting in the public street. Tony goes to his house multiple times. It does feel like someone snaps a picture or someone sees this, they're like, wait a minute, why is our assemblyman meeting with known mob boss Tony Soprano?
Yeah, that's very true. And it's always, I don't know. They're never very careful in this show, to be honest. Like they're always like, oh, what, the FBI is never gonna know about this place, and meanwhile Adriana is like an informant.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I did think about that when he shows up at the house. It's like, does nobody care? But I guess they don't tail Tony Soprano every day. I guess. But I'm sure they already know about their collaborations. But then when you see FBI meetings, you're not sure what they know because they're like always asking Adriano this basic shit. Who knows? So they hand out the money, and Zellman, he starts having like some doubts of like, do you ever feel bad about this stuff we're due? Do you ever feel like someone should beat you with a belt? No, just me. Just me.
Yeah, it is nice. So yeah, sometimes I feel like I should be punished, and then he like pats the envelope that's in his inside pocket or whatever. And then the other guy's just saying, hey, when we started out, we wanted to make a difference, but hey, it's just shoving shit against the tide. If it ain't us, it's someone else. And I mean, that's nothing new, but it does feel so real. Like, not that I think it excuses anything, but you totally see how someone can get caught into that mindset, and that's just how, like, hey, well, that's just the way things are. So what am I? Not gonna get it? Not gonna wet my beak? I'm not gonna get a taste.
Yeah. And the next scene is when Tony's driving and he's singing along and he's having a good time.
Real quick.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just quick, but we have the Adriana with her wedding dress, where she learns the sad fact that maybe the television show wasn't correct. She does get it clarified with, it looks like kind of like a low-level lawyer. And then we see her at the wedding shower, and all she's getting are appliances, like, oh, this you can make this in the kitchen and make that. And Adriana is kind of a hip, cool chick. She's not, I think she even said in an earlier season, like, oh, what am I just gonna be like one of those mob wives like Carmela Soprano or something?
Yeah.
But now it's like that's your destiny at this point.
Yeah, and it's like all the shit in the presents are all like, welcome to the kitchen. You're never gonna leave now because there's another toaster and a blender and a serving tray, and like it's literal, like all of it's like a coffee machine. Oh my god, you're gonna love that. And it's really, her seeing her future laid out all around her because she's one of the mob wives now.
And then, as you're saying, then we see Tony. We see multiple scenes like this where sometimes Tony's driving around, like listening to songs. I mean, we saw when he was beating the shit out of his fucking CD player for skipping or whatever that time. Unless that was the dream. I forget if that was the dream or really happened. But yeah, see, then the song comes on and he starts singing along, but then he gets, he starts tearing up and it's really affecting him. He shows up at Zellman's house. Irina's still there, and what does he say to her when she opens the door? He says something like, "Do you have anything?
Like, do you got something to drink?" Yeah.
And then he goes in, and it's great because the guy's like, "Tony, what's going on?" And then Tony just starts taking his belt off for a fucking old school whooping.
Yeah. And it all. I mean, this is I don't know. This is a great scene. I don't mean to seem like I enjoy the violence. Like, it's not great because of the violence, but it's great because of what it sort of reveals about what's going on in Tony's brain. And it also plays into, like, all these three characters have pretty complex emotions going on. I guess mostly Irina and Tony. I mean, Assemblyman Zellman, whatever his name is, I feel like the thing of him going like, oh, sometimes I feel I should be punished, it's a little bit tacked on, obviously. But it generally, like, in general, it's such a complex scene. Even though the scene is just him beating someone up, there's so much complexity to it that it's just great. And he's not like, when he told him, he's not like, oh, you bastard, fuck you. It's like, he pushes it down, and it's like you said, it's all about Gloria. It's all about everything going on. If this scene was in episode 1 of The Sopranos, you'd go like, wow, Tony's crazy. But now you're like, wow, Tony's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, it's in a great, like, and it's great. So yeah, very good ending, I thought.
It's such a great ending. And also, like, in a weird way, earlier in the episode, when he first sees her at Zellman's house, like when he just comes in, he's talking to Zellman, and then she walks in the room.
Yeah.
I still get the feeling that this is very purposeful and she wants Tony back. And this is her weird way of like, oh, hello, Tony, and being like back in his life any way she could. But then also, this is all Tony ever want. Well, I guess it's not what Tony wanted, because Tony wants, Tony wanted her to like move on and like be a professional, I guess, because as we see, like, with Gloria and like to an extent Melfi and stuff, he likes these like professional women, and she was always kind of a kid. And I feel like the way he definitely always wanted her out of his life with all the drama that was happening. But I don't know if there's an element that he wanted her to like better herself and not just be some other, rich guy's side piece or whatever. So I don't know if there's a hint of that as well.
It's honestly, like, no offense to Tony, but I feel like he forgot about Irina until until she was brought up, and like that's the only thing that I'm sure it's like in theory he'd want her to be happy, but then obviously this is making her at least marginally happy, and he has to come and ruin it. So I mean, he's very selfish as well.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, like you said, it really is. I mean, at face value, it's just it's always fun to see violence, I'd say. Like in shows, when you have an anti-hero, that's why you watch it, because it's like, oh my God, they might snap. So at face value, it kind of is fun because it's just he's whipping a grown man with a belt. But you're right, there's so much going on here and telling us about these characters and where they're at.
Yeah. So great ending. I think the episode is pretty good in general as well. I like you said, I like seeing this play out, even though it did at times feel like it's immediately happening after they hear the idea. Like, let's make it happen then. Like, they didn't know you could like do fucking schemes before. They didn't know you could do like buy shit and then sell it and stuff. Like, they had to have someone tell them about it. But yeah, it all still makes sense and adds up to me. Pretty good episode.
Absolutely, I agree. So yeah, what did you think of the episode or other episodes? You can send your thoughts over to showswhatyouknowshow at gmail.com. We'll read it on the show and get your opinion out there and say if it's good or bad.
Yes, absolutely. So that's probably why people don't email in. They don't want us to tell us their bad stuff. But if you want to communicate otherwise, you can also leave a review on iTunes at Shows What You Know or Cut to Black as a Sopranos Sitdown. Yes, we have separate feeds. We also discuss other television shows on showswhatyouknow.com, like Bandersnatch from Black Mirror is on there if you want to have a listen to that. We talk about our different endings and things, and a bunch of other stuff at jimandthem.com, awesomepedia.org. But in addition to that, there's just one more thing.
Oh, what's that?
Cut to Black.